Live on a Sunday night. Oh, there you go. Now I'm alive. Mega Leech, hello. How are you? Nice to see you. That was a terrible low energy start. I'm gonna have to pick that up several notches and be a bit more exuberant. Hi, Luke. How are you doing? You a bit behind on what we've been talking about live streams. How's AZ? He is in hospital. He has been for a while, for over a week now. He thinks they're going to keep him in for a long time to do some rehab. And the big thing that's sort of making them think, we're going to keep you here for a long time to do stuff, because he can't... he can't work his hands, basically. He can't hold things with his hands, and he has trouble standing up and walking without falling over. So the folks in the hospital don't like that, and they're keeping an eye on him. Invisible Chicken, hello. Luke, I am doing fine. And you'll see, I've got my cocktail making outfit on. So I didn't make cocktails. I was going to be really early and make the cocktail videos on Friday night, and I didn't. Just had a good time. So I have some other thoughts about what to do. Yes, Maggie, thank you. I will pass on good wishes to him. He really appreciates it, being passing on everyone's best wishes to you and AIDSy man. What is interesting, because he's all pissed off at the hospital sort of taking control of him, and them having the opinion that he shouldn't be on prescription drugs, and him under the impression that he should be under the prescription drugs. He's been having severe anxiety issues, and they think that he should stop taking the anti-anxiety meds, which is, basically Valium. And he disagrees and is having quite an issue with that. And they also against anti-pain medication, which he's in favor of more pain medication, but he's completely under their control. So, hey, Kyle, how's it going? I don't know why my brain just seized up for a second there when I was going to say your name, but I got there in the end. But yes, so I think while AIDS is busy railing against the hospital, what he probably doesn't want me to tell him, although it's a positive, is he sounds much better. He sounds more alert when he's not in his own little world and trying to push himself to function far beyond what he's capable of doing. And so he doesn't sleep, and he's all tired and fucked up, and seems like he's super stoned when it's actually just sleep deprivation. Now he's in a hospital and he can't get up to shenanigans, and there's people caring for him and feeding him and trying to help him with sleep and whatnot. He actually sounds orders of magnitude more alert than he has in recent times. So that's a positive. He's like super not happy with a bunch of things that are happening, but there are honestly signs that it is good for him. So hopefully things will continue to be good for him. So, it's a challenging life young AIDSy leads, and we shall see how well things go for him. Honestly, over the last couple of years, every time he's ended up in hospital, I couldn't believe how quickly they let him out, because his health issues seemed quite severe. But I don't know whether they were, trying to keep beds vacant, or he was a very smooth talker. He always got out within a couple of days, when I thought, oh no, that's serious, he's going to be in for ages. But this time he thinks he's going to be in for ages, and this is apparently a whole big rehab thing, both because he needs physical therapy because he doesn't have sort of any motor skills or coordination at the moment, and a view of doing some medication rehab as well, as in getting him off medication, which he's not fond of the concept, but maybe it'll happen. Who knows? Kyle, you feel like everything's getting a bit crazy? Everything is getting a bit crazy. It is a crazy world. I love all the analogies people are coming up with for how wild this year is. I saw one on Twitter tonight that I liked. It was like 2020 is just the boat ride from the Willy Wonka movie, but nonstop. And just like, yeah, that is not bad. The thing where Gene Wilder did the spooky thing of there's no way of knowing where we're going, and there's definitely no sign that we're slowing. I'll show you if I can find the words to that. Wondrous Boat Ride lyrics. I think this is them. Okay, it's called the Wondrous Boat Ride. There you go. There's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going, and no knowing where we're rowing or which way the river's flowing. Not a speck of light is showing, so the danger must be growing, and the fires are hella glowing. Is the grizzly reaper mowing? Yes, the danger must be growing, for the rowers keep on rowing, and they're certainly not showing any signs that they are slowing. That all year, I think that is a good descriptor for the mood of 2020. Carl, you reckon the PS5 is the only good thing to come out of this year? It'll be ages before I get a PS5. I can't see getting it in less than a couple of years. Oh, okay. Peter, one of your local councillors, was arrested at a refugee protest, one for the 2020 bingo card. See, when you're at a protest, as police around the world have been showing, I mean, particularly we've been seeing it in America to an extreme, but Australian cops are always like this at protests and rallies as well. They will arrest you and fuck you up just because they're annoyed with you, which is obviously, clearly, blatantly illegal and outside their powers. They will drag people off that they've got no right of dragging them off because they're like a peaceful, non-violent demonstrator. And once the cops grab you and like throw you to the ground stuff, then they say you're resisting. I mean, it's actually freaky the extent to which they do that, as they're like just assaulting someone who wasn't breaking any law. And you know what their game is. The instant the cops start shouting, "Stop resisting," that's the charge you're going to get, resisting arrest. And you get this horrific circular conversation, and it's like, what are you charging me with? Resisting arrest. But why were you arresting me? Because you were resisting. No. You're saying I resisted arrest. What was the charge to arrest? You were resisting. And then they'll just go, because again, because we live in a fucking hellscape, most cops in most jurisdictions around the world do actually have move on powers, where if they tell you to move from where you are, even though you're not breaking any law, the fact that they tell you to move means you legally have to move, and they can arrest you if you don't move. And yes, musical elevator, in summary, upsetting a cop. If you're disrespecting a cop, that's plenty for them to arrest you, often quite violently. And hi, Safa, if I didn't say hi already. So Pete, as refugees held at Kangaroo Point in a hotel, people have been protesting. Yes, that's happening actually in a couple of places around the country. Refugees being kept basically prisoner in hotels. and people protesting it. But that's the thing, they're cops. I mean, the ones we're seeing in the US is outrageous. From assaulting journalists to clearly fabricating reasons to violently arrest non-violent protesters, to firing rubber bullets and smoke grenades and fucking flashbangs into people's faces, deliberately aiming at people's faces and firing these munitions at them. And I think they're up to at least half a dozen people who've lost an eye, being hit in the face with one of these munitions by the cops. They're just fucking outrageous. Hey, Charlie, how's it going? AKA Strictly Seeger, yes. Carl, your preview of cops is you knew you were gay when you saw Colin Farrell in the 2003 movie SWAT. Oh, they're a law unto themselves. Oh, okay. Philippe has a question about TERFs. You feel uncomfortable. Hey, well, that's going to fit into a mood, because I've got a question of a potentially uncomfortable thing that I was going to get some feedback on, but I'm very keen to hear your question, Philippe. Mine is about a potential cocktail video, and I might be being a bit overly sensitive about it, but I thought public forum, a range of people, if I asked a question, I might get an answer. Kyle wants to sound off on the TERFs as well. Okay, Philippe's going to give us a question about something that's come up for him. Of course, it's back in the limelight because of J.K. Rowling's obvious transphobia, and just going with the bullshit of, I know there's just trans people in my life. I love trans people. It's just they're not real. It's like, fuck off. I mean, she thinks she gets points for not being fucking Graham Lennon. Graham Lennon blows my mind because he's such an asshole. I feel like he consciously wakes up every day and asks himself the question, am I just going to have a normal one today, or am I going to go out of my way to vilify and attack some of the most marginalized people in the world? Am I just going to let shit slide, or am I going to be a complete asshole today? And every day, he answers the question, nah, I'm going to be an asshole. Kirsten, still hungover from World Gin Day. Yeah, I could see that happening. I didn't partake in the Gin Day stuff specifically. Did have date night with Mrs. Angry, for which I made a couple of cocktails, but didn't go too wild. Is there a place for statues of Captain Cook in Australia? I mean, yes, to put it mildly, Captain Cook is an extremely flawed person, but yeah, maybe I'm going to throw in my lefty card, but I don't have a significant problem with statues of Captain Cook. Carl, yes, I think we are both guessing where Philippe's question is going, but I'll let him finish it before jumping right in. Look, I think the chucking red paint on the statues is by and large pretty funny. So for the thing with the statues of Howard and Abbott in Ballarat, I think they had red paint splashed on them. I wouldn't have bothered myself. I I think both Howard and Abbott are dickheads. I'm really confused as are there statues of all the prime ministers in Ballarat or just Liberal Party cockheads? I don't know. I don't know which it is. I personally wouldn't have bothered. Also, don't give a shit. But it's not something I would have gone like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Okay, Felipe. 2020 Olympics, IOC was going to allow trans women to compete in women's categories. Some women were pissed off because many trans were still quite a bit bigger than them. Okay, Felipe, I get exactly where you're coming from. My very first point is beware of media talking points on trans athletes, because people who push this idea that trans women athletes have a size advantage and therefore automatically a competitive advantage on cis women athletes are often talking absolute shit. Be aware, of course, trans women take pretty significant dosages of estrogen, among other things, and which changes their physique. The objective analysis of the performance of trans women athletes in a range of sports doesn't show a consistent advantage to trans women. It's possible, and this is the thing, I'm just really cautious on this one, because a lot of the media talking points aren't actually based in fact. They are based on prejudice and false assumptions. I also don't think that it's absolutely cut and dried. There possibly are cases, not possibly. I reckon it is. There are likely to be cases where a trans woman athlete has a size advantage on the majority of cis women athletes. But which sports are you saying that gives them an unfair advantage in? It's like there's this leap of logic. Trans women are bigger than cis women, which is not consistently true. And even if it were, what sports are you saying that gives them an advantage? Okay, Kyle wants to chip in, and I am all for chipping in. I will actually give you a link so you can join in. Okay, Philip, is the women's weightlifting champ trans? Okay, it looks like this New Zealand weightlifter is the center of some controversy. Hubbard competed for New Zealand in men's weightlifting before transition in her 30s. Won 2 gold and silver and 3 of the women's heavyweight. Okay, this is an actual specific concrete case we can look at. Top the podium ahead of Samoan runner-up. Okay. She's become a lightning rod for criticism of the IOC's guidelines. You know what it is reminding me of? That I've got to post it separately on Facebook. Got to God fucking bloody StreamYard and Facebook not talking to one another. God damn it. Let me do this. It's in there. What's interesting is it's reminding me of a couple of incidents over the years where cis women had been bigger than average. I think it was Bev Francis. Anyway, so Carl's going to join us. Hey, Carl.
Hi, Angry. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I just caught you in the middle of like finishing off some work, but I was just like, oh my God, he's talking about trans issues. I love it so much. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Personally, I'd like to say to Felipe, whatever the fuck his name is.
Philip, you know.
Whatever. Look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't really understand. I kind of failed biology in high school. What I will say is, as an advocate, but is I kind of research stories about these specific things, and I hear a lot about what happens, and I try and make sure that what I'm trying to see is from the source, if that's from documentaries and features and stuff like that. And it's really good to program film festivals for this. And there's one film that one of the festivals I work at screened early this year called Changing the Game, which is a film about a whole bunch of trans people who are in sport and kind of the issues around that. And it constantly comes back to a guy named Mac Beggs in Canada, whose story always completely surrounds the importance of impartiality in the press about these issues, because the issue that Mac had is that he was a guy wrestling in the women's team, and everyone was like, well, he's a guy, why the fuck is he doing this? And the issues were actually around the constitutional rights given by the state, making sure that he was wrestling to his biological gender rather than doing it to his assigned with. So I think it's really important to be aware of these issues and laws. If we kind of go through this, it's really hard, because these things are very it's kind of come in and to and fro. And I've heard it before. I've heard the aspect of like, well, what happens if this? And at the end of the day, people who are trans are not trans because they want to affect the result of people. They're not just going to go through stages of going through like hormones and gender reassignment surgery and stuff like that, all this different stuff. If literally their goal is they just want to do that, it would be a ton of work for nothing. And you've got to understand that the trans surgery, especially in Australia, is not covered by Medicare. So people actually have to fund it out of their pocket. So it's just being honest about these things. And I look like that I have been doing weed. I promise I'm not on drugs, but lately my eyes look like they have just completely... I looked at my eyes and I was like, God, it looks like I've been doing drugs, but I'm not. I just had a really hectic day. I went to IKEA today. That was a terrible decision to make. Do I look tired? Maybe it's because I'm tired. But yeah, no. So going back to it, it's just like no one's going to become trans for the basis aspect of trying to delegitimize women's sports or go into that space. I hate the term used by TERFs and transphobic people, which is that people are trans because they're wanting to get into those spaces. No, trans women are women at the end of the day. And I think it's the way that we need to understand that. These people deserve a respect. Yes, there will be people who try and use some of this, but that's such a small percentage of people who are genuinely there. It's because they have worked their ass off and they want to be there. I don't know what. I'm very curious.
Yeah. Well, see, it's interesting. There's this one particular case where I did a bit of news searching that is hitting the news. There's a trans woman from New Zealand who's a contender for top spot in the world, and she also previously competed in men's competitions. She transitioned quite comparatively late in life, in her 40s. There's argument, things like, they are putting out bone density, muscle mass advantages even after transitioning in that case. But it's like, well, where do you draw the line? Because it's just making me remember cases of cis women who were bigger and stronger than average that always made people iffy. And it's just like, there's a Australian weightlifter in the 70s, 80s, Bev Francis, because she had a very, what you'd call a traditionally masculine physique. She's very blocky. And there was a lot of, obnoxious, veiled innuendo about her. And the French tennis player, Emily, I looked her up, Emily Mauresmo, she's taller and stronger than most women players. And apparently she has a particularly devastating serve. She serves much harder and faster than most women tennis players. She's a cis woman, but generated all this controversy. I think it's like, as soon as you start saying, and this is one of the things that gets me, these people who obsessively attack trans women on various things, they're so callous in their attacks. They're usually sweeping up cis women in it as well. And it's like, and I've heard multiple stories and been reported in the media about cis women who happen to be a bit butch being harassed going into a public toilet because it's like, oh man, it's like, well, this person is not fitting your preconceptions of the physique of a woman, even though this is a cis-born woman, and you feel justified in attacking her because of these fucked up attitudes. It's like the dumb statement J.K. Rowling said last week, bringing menstruation into it. It's like, for fuck's sake, there is a significant chunk of cis women who never menstruate. And there's another chunk who, because of
the same thing of being like, it's called menstruation, but it's like, how dare you call it menstruation because the word's men in there and men don't menstruate. And you're like, are you fucking serious right now?
I don't know that anyone who says that is serious, but
well, hopefully not.
Yeah, but my point being, these arguments usually end up sweeping up cis women in it as well. Like if someone starts going, I refuse to accept that trans woman because of how she looks, because of her physique, is going, there's a fuck ton of cis women with the same physique. And
but Andrew, I was about to call you angry. The issue here is not specifically about the way that cis women are treated. It's the fact that what you have here is when trans people are involved in sport, it is just an easy target for them. If they get first place, there is always going to be this issue around, oh, Hannah got first place. She didn't get it because she's good at her sport. She got it because she's trans and she has this different bone density to her and stuff like that. And that is the problem here. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be more fundamental resources and studies that go into understanding the narrative. As I said, I'm not somebody who is a doctor. I have no training in this. I do not understand. I don't even understand how my body works. And I'm a fucking guy. and so like what we need is more people who are statisticians and people who work within the field of genetics and biology to come out and say, well, what is this? How is this? And what is this? And we also need to make sure those people are completely not biased and they're completely transparent. If whether they are or they're for or against trans people in sport, people need to be aware of stuff like this, because a lot of the arguments that I hear from people on the street, from my friends, is, oh, I have a daughter, I have a son. I really like, sport is ingrained in Australia. And I feel like Australia could be one of those places where, if we're not very careful, the biggest issue around will be, oh, that person's different because they're trans and they've got this, everyone else has kind of got this handicap and stuff like that. Well, I'm like, well, no, because this person who is a doctor and who deals with a lot of genetics can actually sort of speak to the issues of this.
Yeah.
It's quite frustrating sometimes, because I think sometimes,
It's also complex. So I'm going to add Addie to the stream. Hello. And before, I think you probably have views, Addie. Before you, I'm just going to say, Philip has been asking questions. And in fact, I think he raises a very good point, saying, is this concept of binary division the actual source of the trouble? Because we live in a non-binary world. You may have views on that, Addie.
Me, views, opinions. And as some might see, I've also changed my screen name. I have made a decision on my preferred name. So instead of going by Addie, I'm now going by Sia Lumi. So either
wow.
Okay.
Oi, you works as well.
Or you, yeah, okay, yeah, that's
one of my colleagues going, when you change your name, I may forget it. I was like, that's fine, just go oi you and chuck something at me. I'll respond to that. But yeah, binary is such bullshit.
It is. And I think it's worth Philip asking. It's a complex question. That's the thing. A comparatively simple sounding question. The question itself is really complex. The answer is more complex. And anyone who tries to make it simple is probably, well, I mean, okay. I'm probably putting myself in a knot there, because I am actually saying trans women are women. But I think saying this rigid binary is probably a problem. But again, people pointing to a specific case and saying that trans woman seems to have a physical advantage in her sport over a lot of the other women in it. It's like, yeah, but dozens and dozens and dozens of other trans women don't have a demonstrable advantage. And it's sort of like bringing up some cis women in the past who, because their physique is not absolutely typical of cis women, people have gone, oh, I'm not sure that's fair. And they do it to cis. As soon as you start bringing the shit in, you start doing it to cis women as well. And it's just like, oh, bloody hell.
But Andrew, what if the shoe was on the other foot?
Yeah.
What if you're a woman who transitions into a male, to which, if we're using the same logic, then the bone density is actually not as strong as a lot of cis males. And so what does it mean? Are they transitioning into a sense of disadvantage rather than into a sense of advantage?
Well, I can think of an actual specific case on that in the US. It was at high school level, well, possibly college, high school or college level, in wrestling, you know, that Greco-Roman wrestling.
That would be Mac.
Yeah, there was, and this was a trans man, and I think he's from like Texas or somewhere fucked up like that. And they were saying like, no, you have to compete in the girls division.
That's what I
goes, that's really weird, but okay. And fucking clean the floor with every girl in the competition, because he's very traditionally masculine in build, is trans, but he's a big dude. And they said, no, you have to compete in the girls. And he's going, that's a real bad idea. And they go, you have to. Okay. So just wiped the floor with all these girls. It's like, I should be competing against the boys. That's where I belong. You know, it's just like, but this shit goes around.
And then you'll get arguments from people going, oh, but if they're taking testosterone, they're cheating because other athletes can't take performance-enhancing drugs. No, if you stop taking the testosterone, that's kind of a bad idea. Like, it undoes a lot of things. And there are side effects to taking medicated testosterone. So it's not as if it's like a free pass and just all the advantages. Like, there are actual medical side effects that do impact on the day-to-day for trans men that I think, unfortunately, when you get the bigot army coming after them, they don't think about that.
Yeah.
But that's why I was talking about at the start, because we were actually, I mean, that whole scenario was pretty much Mac. I don't know. I think that was that Mac?
Could have been. I've forgotten his name. But so.
But no, what I was saying is like, this is why these really important things is to look down specifically at the issues, not always surrounding the issues around trans people in general, but the systemic aspects of binary around that. Why are these people dealing with this? In the issues around MACBEGs, it's more about a constitutional law that says that sex is assigned at birth. And so if Mac didn't get it changed, he'd have to wrestle with the girls. And then it brings up this whole issue. And it actually not just affects him, but it affects everyone else, because then he's actually everyone else is unable to be the best that they can be because of a technicality, which is technically illegal and is being thrown in not because of any such idea of equality. It's being thrown in there because of the issues around transphobia. And it's also really important that we understand the importance of making sure that there is that representation and there is that space there for trans people to be like, this is my body, and you spend so much time talking about me, where it should be about, hey, let's kind of have a discussion about, you know what, shit is fucked. I think it's so much. It's because, as I said, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but it's such a harder question about how do you deal with this. And I've been spending like a good year of my life ever since I saw the documentary Mac Wrestles into really looking at the actual aspects of trans people in sport, because I think it's so interesting. And hopefully more filmmakers who are queer or straight or whatever actually do some documentaries about trans people in sport, because I'd fucking love to see it. I'd love to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be interesting to also get the scientific studies as well.
Yes.
I know they've had a couple, but unfortunately, because this has only been something that's starting to occur more frequently in the last, 5-10 years, it's hard because there's not a lot of time to then do long-term research in such a short time frame. So I'd love to see some studies coming through showing whether or not there is a justifiable, actual, manageable change, or whether it is, no, actually, this is what the physical changes are. This is how this does or does not impact on sports, and this is what the realistic balance is. I mean, we're not otherwise your other option is to make a other or trans category, which then becomes messy when you get people like me who are non-binary and are just like, I'm neither.
Look, I mean, that's the big question of the hour, isn't it? Is if we can't get trans people right, what about the people who don't fall completely in either form of gender? And then how does that get dealt with in regards to things like the IOC? This is really going to be a really huge test of both fairness, equality, but also the kind of aspect around the understanding of where people who are queer fit into Olympic sport in general. And I'm not saying that as a person who says that, who is making an admission of where I stand in regards to fluidity in sport, because I have no idea where that sits, because I'm still on completely not understanding what is the complete idea of trans people in sport, even though I'm totally for it, and honestly it's not going to change my life because I'm not a fucking sports player. I mean, look at me, I'm pretty much fat anyway.
Hey, that's me, not athletic.
But it's more about the aspect of we need to kind of understand the really important work that is being done to educate and understand, for people to articulate trans people in sport. And I think there's really great organizations like Pride in Sport, which is by ACON in New South Wales. I'm assuming other states will have them, where you can genuinely find the information about people who work and people whose lives kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm so fucking tired. There's information there. It's just that Pride in Sport. Go and find it.
Yeah. Hey, adding to the non-sporty crowd, Pete. Hello.
Hello.
Before I bring you in, Pete, Philip, I want to go back to what you're saying. You're trying to get back to a question of fairness in sport. Is fairness like, that's a subjective term that you can't assign objective reality to. And I come back to what I'm thinking specifically about women's sports. What about the cases, and these happen on the regular, cis women who are significantly bigger and stronger on average than other cis women? And people do start going, oh, that's not really fair competing against them. What is fair? Where does it come in? I mean, I'm being a little bit lighthearted, but how is it fair that Usain Bolt exists? He is apparently superhuman. Surely, if we're being fair, he has to have 10-kilogram lead weights attached to his ankles when he runs, because he just blows people away.
Ian Thorpe.
Is that fair?
Ian Thorpe, when he started swimming, how was that fair? The man had flippers for feet.
Yeah.
Same with Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps has huge feet.
Yeah.
Huge feet. But it gave him an unfair biological advantage. And it's just
and then you get people like and then you get people like, what's his name in cycling, who years later has found out he was taking just a shit ton of drugs.
Well, that's the difference. Dosing up. Yeah,
Lance Armstrong. I was like, God damn it, my brain's just coming up with the man who used to bike ride with Robin Williams, and I'm like, yes, really?
I think Invisible Chicken's asking a question about intersex people now, which is where it gets even super, super, super more complicated. And
I don't think, from what I understand, I don't actually, because from what I understand is intersex people relates more to chromosomal makeup than actually the the way that the body is actually like, from what I understand about intersex, I thought that's just chromosomal makeup than anything.
I don't want to say anything negative, but no. There is actually a spectrum of people who fall under the banner of intersex, and sometimes it is simply chromosomal, which is why that dumb turf argument about XXXY is bullshit, because it's not actually consistent. But it also, again, for the genital obsessed people, it often involves people born with either partial or complete sets of both genitalia. A friend of mine who I met through YouTube, she had she was born with both recognizable external genitalia, and she was in the fucking Appalachians, in the most fucking freaky redneck part of America. And they made a decision when she was born. They stitched up her vagina, go, well, she's got an external penis. We'll tell her she's a boy. did not have testosterone-producing testes, did have estrogen-producing ovaries, though. So they stitched up her vagina and said, you're a boy, no reason to doubt. And you know how girls often have a growth spurt before boys? So from the age of about 12 to 14, he was very popular in sport because he was bigger than all the other boys, but he also stopped growing at 14 and then started growing boobs because estrogen was. And then it was like, what the fuck is going on? And various sort of ultrasounds going, oh, you have ovaries and a uterus. And so it's a thing.
Totally. So, I'm really tired, so I'm clearly going to make a lot of mistakes tonight. But
intersex is like the understanding of intersex as a spectrum is newer information, and there's not been a lot about it, so it's definitely easy to get confused on.
And like I said, it's a spectrum.
It's so like, it's so hard to be like, it's like.
It's basically when people try to put everyone into tiny boxes and say, this is this, this is this. It doesn't work. Humans just aren't like that.
Invisible Chicken said something about people who are externally one gender but internally the opposite.
Do you mean emotionally or identity-wise, or like what I was talking about? This friend of mine who actually had physical external genitals of a male, but the internal organs of a female, and so didn't produce any testosterone, but produced estrogen. So I'm not sure exactly what sense you mean. Oh, Phillips put Rachel McKinnon's answer about differences. Kenyans make great runners because they live in an low O2 environment, but Indonesians are often less than 5 foot tall. How is ethnicity fair? Why don't we just discriminate on that basis? It is. As soon as you say fair, that word's borderline meaningless because there are too many variables involved. And honestly, we might have really different information and different views 10 years from now because, certain things have only been taken seriously, academically, scientifically, medically in the last couple of decades. And it's possible we're understanding things quite poorly now. Everyone always likes to think, I got a handle on it. I know and then, 10, 20 years later, you're going, maybe.
And
as it turns out, biology is actually really quite complicated and not as straightforward as a lot of people who love to talk about biology think it is. It's just ridiculous. My favorite thing relating to trans women in sports comes from there's a website called Kayfabe News that covers professional wrestling. They're kind of like the Onion of professional wrestling. Okay. And there's a trans women wrestler in AEW at the moment called Nyla Rose. And the headline was essentially, idiot complains that Nyla Rose has an unfair advantage in a fixed sport.
Yeah.
And it was
the arguments do get very weird. Yes.
Yeah, it's just like there was a lot of ridiculous sort of things aimed at her, and it's just like it's not an actual competition. Why are you focusing on this? She's,
Philip's saying he doesn't think fair's meaningless. Inequality. The thing is, fair's subjective. Anyone who thinks they can come up with a completely fair system is talking shit because there are too many variables. You have to bring in 500 things. Bring in, even in sport, bring in economic variables. Someone who grew up in an environment where their parents could afford to take them to training every day and invest hours of every day into training and getting them all the equipment they needed, they've got an obvious unfair advantage on someone who doesn't have that economic power.
exact case on that would be oh my god, my brain tonight. I can't think of athletes' names, and this is a big ice skater. Was it Tonya Harding who
the figure skater?
Yes. So she grew up poor. She worked her ass off. She made her own costumes, and she was unfairly discriminated against, even though she was athletically better than a lot of the people she was competing against, because they didn't like her music, they didn't like her makeup. There was so much that she was unfairly disadvantaged and marked down for. Had she not been discriminated against and had not had a psycho husband, some of the events that occurred probably wouldn't have, but she would have done well in the Olympics had they let her, but they were discriminating against her because she was poor and she was white trash, and they didn't want white trash. They wanted the girl in the Vera Wang outfit. Same with, there's been black figure skaters who have been extremely discriminated against because they're not the white fairy princess that America wants them to be. It's so fucking frustrating. I know way too much about figure skating because Jonathan Van Ness, and I was like, is this a thing now? Like, God, he's just hooking all of us in. We're just going, oh, pretty costumes, music, I'm in.
Yeah.
I was going to say, guys, that I'm going to head off because I'm just going to finish my work, and then I'm going to watch a movie from Sydney Film Festival. So if you guys have a good discussion about trans stuff, and hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Have a good
night.
See you, Carl.
Okay. I'm going to bring up my other potentially sensitive thing for me, and arguably completely different. But there is a date in known in the US as Juneteenth, and that actually marks the day the last US state signed the Emancipation Proclamation. I think it was Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll get some detail so I don't say anything really stupid. So it's the 19th of June. So this year it's this coming Friday. I often try to do themes for cocktails on my YouTube channel. So Juneteenth is June 19th, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day. It commemorates June 19, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger read the federal orders in Galveston, Texas, that all previously enslaved people in Texas were free. Although the Emancipation Proclamation had formally freed them almost 2.5 years earlier, American Civil War had largely ended with the defeat of the Confederate States. Texas was the most remote of the slave states, with a low presence of Union troops, so enforcement of the proclamation had been slow and inconsistent. So basically, this June 19th marks the final state going, yes, the slaves are free. And I looked up, are there traditional drinks for Juneteenth? And there are a couple. And red is very popular. So just in terms of drinks and making a punch, red is popular because hibiscus tea apparently has some meaning in it. And I note also rum and cognac are popular. And I was thinking I could do all these bloody milk clarified milk punches that I'm making. I could do a Juneteenth punch, and I'll look up some of the traditional things that are popular. But is that really tacky? Is that well, basically, does that feel like cultural appropriation? I'm in two minds, essentially. What do you think, Pete?
I honestly don't have an answer to that. It's sort of like, I don't think it would really be cultural appropriation in the sense of, I don't think you would be, what I understand about cultural appropriation is essentially a lot of the times a dominant group taking something that's from a culture and making that seem really cool when it's in the dominant group's sort of thing, but the sort of underclass or oppressed group that they're taking it from is victimized or penalized for it. So I don't think it'd be that. But in terms of, is it a bit sort of tacky or not, I don't really know. I think that's just a matter of personal taste.
Yeah,
It's a bit of,
yeah, but yeah, it's like, white person with dreadlocks. It's like, okay, there's a white guy saying, "Hey, I'm making this for Juneteenth." Is that white dude with dreadlocks level stuff? I'm just not sure.
I think it depends on the intent. From what a lot of my black friends have been saying, is that like they prefer the term black, which is something I'm having to teach myself because I was taught as a kid to never use that. And they're like, no, no, that. Yeah. Okay, great. Now I know. And they've said, the intent of celebrating black holidays, if the intent is to add to that celebration, that's not an issue. The issue is like with the white person who has dreads saying that, my Viking ancestors also, no, they didn't. Also, Vikings wasn't a class of people. It was a job. Not all of the Norse were Vikings. That's a whole nother issue that a bunch of white people need to learn to fucking read. Yeah. And they did braids. They didn't do dreads. Dreads are a protective hairstyle, and it just shows a certain level of willing ignorance and really not giving a shit when white people who have the resources and have been told continue to wear dreads.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, John Marin saying hibiscus tea is great. It is, and would make a very good ingredient in a Juneteenth punch. Philip, I just want to say something. You're saying about maybe left-right bias is totally unhelpful. Also, you're saying, you want to feel, is this fair? You don't want to be. I don't think you're at all turfy, actually. I think you're literally asking, you just want, it's a question, is this fair? And my primary argument is you cannot just put a line down and say, I'm going to do this and not this, because it's not going to work. But in terms of left-right bias, this is not a left-right thing. Yes, you get a lot of socially conservative people who are very aggressively transphobic, but you get a great big old chunk of people who consider themselves left-wing and progressive, particularly older generations, but watch them going my generation and older, Gen X and older, some old school lefties, feminists, are very inflexible on the question. Only some. I don't think it's majority. I don't think it's even that significant a minority, but there are a lot of people who consider themselves left and progressive who are very down and anti-trans.
Well, there's even people in the queer community who are fucking anti-trans, and it's
yeah.
What are you doing here? Piss off! If you're not fighting for all of us, you're not fighting for any of us.
Oh God, you get gay and lesbian people who will treat bi people like shit. I mean, nobody has exclusive. I'm good to people and they're bad to people. There's always
some shit people, and as someone who is pan, but I also use bi because people still don't understand pan, even though it's been around for decades. It's just not common usage. That was not fun. I remember having very negative experiences with a lot of older gay white men telling me to pick a side and that kind of shit.
Look, and again,
I'm sitting on the fence. Your face will be sore when I fucking punch you.
Yeah. The having gone to uni in the 80s with second wave feminists and the older white gay men who were incredibly I've seen that judgmental shit from allies and that hurts more than some sort of hardcore social conservative Bible thumper saying you're all going to hell. You can just go, Fred, no, fuck off, whatever. But from allies is
exactly. And Invisible Chicken's just saying about ace, trans, bi, pan are often excluded from the LGBTIQA plus community. Asexuals. I have a lot of friends who get constantly erased when people are just going, but you have to have a partner. No, they don't. But you have to want to have kids. No, you don't. And even if you're not ace, valid. why are we telling people they have to do something because they've been born with certain reproductive organs that may or may not do what you want them to?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Philip, you have to go do some work now. Yeah, dude. I think honestly, you hit the nail on the head with I don't fucking know what the answer is. I think being able to push down. There's an impulse to say I want things to be fair, but that's a little greasy pig. It's a squirmy little pig that's been covered in grease, and you try and grab it and squeeze it out of your hand. It seems sensible. I can hold that, and you try and I'm going to go Star Wars nerd again about I think it was Leia said to either Princess Leia Leia said it to either Vader or Grand Moff Tarkin. The tighter you squeeze your grip, the more worlds will slip between your fingers. It's like the more you try and hone in on a subjective word like fair and say, I'm going to absolutely define what the boundaries of fair are, more and more exceptions are going to leak out the side, and your definition of fair is going to be unfair to people. Literally, no matter what you do, if you say, oh, everyone should be in even ground, going, well, that's just not the way life works, actually.
Yeah, and even if there are certain quote-unquote objective qualities that you could use to measure fairness, how you rank those things and what importance you place on those things is a really subjective thing. It's kind of like, like people go, oh, yeah, I can say this is objectively bad in this way, but it's like, but there are other aspects you haven't considered that might be more important. And it's just, it's a very tricky subject, and I didn't pass grade 10 biology, so I'm just like, I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about it, but what I will say is a lot of people who do seem to think they know a lot about it are not usually being told by people who know a lot more than I do that they're wrong. It's
I mean, it comes down to, again, I also, my friend, not a biologist or a sociologist for that matter, but I defer to the biologists and sociologists who I've read who say the biological binary argument does not make sense. The sociological binary argument does not make sense. That just isn't how things work. The fact that you can say, well, it works that way most of the time, well, friggin' awesome, dude. A lot of the times it works, but in a really significant chunk of times, it doesn't. So, Oh my God, Kirsten, you're a straight white woman who does want children, and that can make people mad. Yep, I tell you what, talking about allies being shit, there's someone, when you've been talking to someone so long on social media, you start to lose track on whether you've actually met them. Oh, hi, Opie, how's it going? Popping up to say hello there.
Yes.
Here's a person who I consider a friend. I'm not 100% sure we've ever been in the same physical space. We've been talking, but she works in education. She's worked in game development. She works on a lot of social issues. She said one day, because she's a mum, and she works in gaming, game development, and education for programming and gaming. She said she actually gets more, and she's like been really vocally against things like Gamergate, for instance, and how toxic that is and whatnot. But she says she actually has experienced getting shit more often from feminists, from self-proclaimed feminists, for being a mum than she has from gamers for being a woman. And I just went, oh, that's fucked.
Yeah.
And she's not a conservative. She's a feminist. She's a very, very raging, flag-waving feminist. But she says she's been criticized more for being a mum in feminist circles than she has for being a woman in gamer circles. And that was fucking depressing to hear, I tell you. Oh. Oh, okay. Kirsten's actually saying she meant to say doesn't. Straight white woman doesn't want to have children. But see, Kirsten, either works. Weird people will hassle you and go, I actually do want to fit into one of these traditional roles because I'm happy like that. Good for you. You shouldn't. But if you don't want to have children, who the fuck's business is that? But yours. It's like, ugh.
The worst is
I have a friend. I have a friend who they're very much set on they don't want to have children, and they were telling me about the hoops that they have to jump through in order to get their tubes tied or a hysterectomy, and it's
that's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
it's so fucked and backwards, and it's just it's their body. Let them make their own decision, and it's
full of hormones that cause so many fucking side effects, some of which are suicide, possibly not a good one. Blood clots causing strokes, also not so great. Yeah. Maybe if you're uncertain they don't want kids, fucking let them not have kids.
Yeah, yeah. Also, like John's input, like agreeing with some very expletive word, hits the nail on the head. But you often see the most well-meaning person can have a whole raft of unconscious biases and go, oh, I set that up, that was fair. And then someone explains part of their experience means this absolutely wasn't fair to them. Yeah. And the struggle to not be defensive in cases like that, when you've set something up and you've gone to huge lengths to make it fair, and someone says it isn't fair because you never considered this, because it's outside your experience and your unconscious bias into, and fighting the urge to kick back at that, like, oh, no, fuck you, I'm fair, fuck you. And actually being able to take, oh, there was a thing I didn't know. There was a thing I didn't know. Shit.
But, and I know Invisible Chicken said about being ace, they get told they shouldn't be included because they can pass or aren't discriminated against enough.
Yeah, they definitely are discriminated against.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, but even like it gets so weird. The number of times I've seen like gay dudes I know say like, I go on dating sites and these fucking guys are on like even Grindr, like they only want a straight passing guy, and it's like, the fuck is wrong with you? What does that even mean? And
because that's what America has fetishized.
Yeah.
That is what the American gay scene has pushed forward. That, oh, you should get one of those men who are straight, but they're not really straight. And it's like, can we not invalidate people's sexual orientations? Sorry, I've got a psycho cat who keeps trying to sneak up and bite me. Go away.
Definitely wants to be in the action.
I think one of the worst manifestations of that particular sort of like straight passing, we want to just be, accepted into cis hetero society, was Pete Buttigieg. He was kind of the perfect example of just like trying to fit into that mold of respectability for people who hate him anyway because of who he sleeps with. It's just like, why even fucking bother if they're still going to hate you after that? Yeah. Like, just be yourself.
Well, I thought Pete Buttigieg was a great moment in equality, not because he was the first openly gay candidate, but because he's a piece of shit.
He sure is.
The gay guy does not have to be the model of progressiveness and being on point with anything. He's a fucking CIA stooge, that guy. He's awful. Yeah. Pete Buttigieg is awful. And that's equality in my book, that the high-profile gay candidate can be fucking awful. He doesn't, Obama was the model black guy, okay? And I just thought it was a great moment that Pete Buttigieg is a dickhead. He was disliked that guy so much. But anyway, that's my random Pete Buttigieg rant. He's out of the pub. I don't know if anyone's going to remember him in a year. I don't know. Depends. If
hopefully not.
If Biden wins, he might get a job, because that was, oh my God, that primary thing when him and Klobuchar dipped out before the Super Tuesday. And so all the votes went to Biden, which I was really surprised. I didn't think the Democratic establishment had that much power, but they do.
Oh, they do. They do.
Because if Klobuchar and Buttigieg has stayed in, Sanders would have swept Super Tuesday. He would have had a blinder. But the establishment just went, chunk, no, everyone else out. it's Biden. Okay, does everyone understand that? It's Biden. And I didn't think it would work, and it did. And I was like, oh, fuck me, they've got more power than I thought. There you go. Okay.
And a lot of people in the US now are.
I don't mean
a
it was
lot of people in the
scam,
US now are.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go, Angry.
I was going to say, when I say I didn't know they had that much power, I don't mean they cheated or scammed. They definitely did a deal with Buttigieg and Klobuchar, but that's just politics. I'm not saying I think the result was illegitimate. I think that was the way people chose to vote. They just went, oh, the party said he's the guy. Okay, that's who I'm voting for. And I was like, damn, I didn't know I had no idea that would be that effective, but it was. Yeah.
Love Suffer said, what if Trump refuses to leave the White House? Biden's already said they will get the military to take him out. And I love on TikTok, there was a user who said, okay, but can we get them to use tear gas and rubber bullets? Because, like, it's only fair at this point.
Yeah, that seems fair.
I think a lot of people in the United States are starting to learn now, though, as well, particularly with the continued protests and uprisings against police brutality, that Bernie Sanders was the compromise that people had in mind. And now that's just been thrown, completely out the window. And it's just like, there's going to be a... And now it's just like, now the demand is very clear. Defund the police. Defund the police. Just like...
Have you seen that area in Seattle where they've taken over one of the police precincts, boarded it up, and have for several blocks just taken over? And it's just a police-free zone. It's got street malls. And because I love, there was a guy going through it, because I've been on the queer and Black Lives Matter TikTok stuff at the moment because it's just keeping me sane. Oh my gosh, they're like, it's like a farmer's market. Everyone is so nice, and we've got medics, and we've got food. And I'm like, yeah, this is what happens when you don't have fucking oppressors coming through and ruining everything.
Yes, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, as I...
Speaking of oppressors, does anyone want a rundown of the goings-on at Kangaroo Point that have been happening over the last 24 to 48 hours?
You were saying there was, with the protests about the asylum seekers who are locked up in a hotel. Yes. So
there's a whole bunch of asylum seekers being held in Kangaroo Point in a hotel, and people have been protesting there for a little while now, usually on Fridays, and kind of been doing it under the guise of like, oh, we're just going for a walk, we're having an exercise, but we're, throwing up the X in solidarity with the people at the hotel and things like that. And the police response has been very gradually building, because the people inside are protesting as well. They're dropping banners from the balconies and things like that. And I think it was about it's something that happened within the last week. A white van turned up in the middle of the night to start disappearing some of the people who've been participating in the protests inside the hotel. And that's been responded to with a rolling occupation of activists and protesters just camping outside to make sure that doesn't happen again. And the police have been gradually escalating the response. And on Saturday, I think it was, it was yesterday, there was a protest outside the front that was designated that blocked off one of the main streets. In Main Street, and that went on till about 5 p.m. or so, but the occupation was still going on. Our local, he's not my local councillor, but the councillor for that area is Jonathan Shree, who's a member of the Greens and the Brisbane City Local Council, and he's been actively participating and helping out with the occupation and the protests. And he was... last night he was heading to his car, and he was about to leave, and he was apprehended by police and arrested. And basically, their reasoning was, we issued him a move-on order, but he was headed to his car and he was leaving anyway. But they still just stopped him and arrested him and chucked him in the back of a police van. And people there were rightfully quite annoyed at an illegal arrest taking place in front of them. I was watching all the live streams and the footage later, and people just sat down in front of the van as a form of protest. And then the police decided to come in and started manhandling people, and apparently, started throwing people to the ground and being very aggressive when people aren't provoking them in any way. It got not the levels of violence that we've seen in the US, but definitely pretty rough, disproportionately so to the threat that was placed in front of them. And but Jono's out now. There has been some people speculating about whether this arrest may have been directed by the Lord Mayor, because Jono has been a consistent pain in his ass over the last little while. The LNP council definitely don't like him very much at all. So some people are speculating this might be an excuse to discipline him. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. From everything that I saw, it looks like an illegal arrest was made. So yeah, we'll see how long that holds up.
Yeah, it's like the cops who keep getting pinged doing the nudge wink white power sign, because they know what they do. And that was one of the weirdest things, because that started off like on the chans with them saying, hey, let's freak out the normies, let's start a rumor that the OK symbol is white. But I say, hello, Abigail.
Hi. How are you?
Abigail.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now it's gone. No?
Headphones. Because I've got speakers. And...
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I was just going to say, so that for those who don't know, why do people say the OK sign is a white power thing? Because on the chans, they got together and said, let's mess with the normies. Let's start a rumor that doing the OK symbol is a white power thing. And then when they all fall for it, we'll laugh and say, you fell for it, you idiots. But all the white supremacists started using it to signal each other, and then went, it's not really, but it is. That's actual white supremacists using it to say, yeah, I'm a white supremacist. And it went down this plug hole. It was so strange.
What symbol is it?
This. So now someone do an out of context screenshot, please. Yeah, of the white power hour here. But yeah, it started off as a prank saying, let's say that's a white power symbol. And when the normies freak out and say it's a white power symbol, we'll laugh at them. But then all the white supremacists started using it to actually signal to each other and go, well, it is. Like when a cop does it, that's a white power thing. When, the fucking alt-right fuckheads and white supremacists and crypto-fascists and neo-Nazis who are infiltrating the LNP in Australia do it, the young nationals and the young libs around the table, they all flash the symbol. They are laughing like, yeah, fuck you, we'll do white supremacist symbology. What are you going to do to stop us? And it's just like, it's so dumb.
And it's a symbol that I've never seen Australian police use before until it suddenly became quite popularized as well. Because as we all, the excuse they came up with was we were just asking people if they were okay, because cops, particularly at protests, are really concerned about the well-being of protesters and activists. That's a known thing. They don't. That plays into the whole alt-right sort of thing about it's just shit posting, it's just jokes, sort of thing. Yeah. Until it isn't a joke. Until it turns out
Schrodinger's joke.
Yeah, until it turns into a mass shooting. Yeah. Oh, hi, Annette, by the way, who came in. What's the other one? The Boogaloo crowd. In America, this militia type, the right-wing militia types, who say they want a second American Civil War. So they came up with the joke, everyone, ever since that terrible movie Breakdance 2 Electric Boogaloo came out, whenever an unwanted sequel comes along, you call it Electric Boogaloo. And they've started calling, they're instigating a second Civil War, the Boogaloo. So it's the Boogaloo movement. But the way memes work, they've just been mutating it and mutating it and mutating it. So you can't really point to them and say, That's a right-wing militia saying there should be a second, because they changed the word. It's got the stage where wearing a Hawaiian shirt is a thing the Boogaloo crowd do. And I forget exactly how they got to it.
Don't do that. That's lesbian gear. You can't steal our culture. People need Hawaiian shirts. They're happy.
Yeah. So
I'm so confused by the right wing and signaling and what I like. Who knows? Like, it used to be just Pepe, and now like I'm even confused about that. Like, has Pepe been reclaimed? Yeah, and all these hand signals. I'm so confused.
yeah,
Like,
it is.
make up your minds, guys. Just do the German Nazi salute and just
be
leave
done
it
with
at that. I'm so confused.
There is a really good book written by Robert Paxton. It's called The Anatomy of Fascism, and it's a really good sort of rundown as fascism as like a methodological process. And one of the things that he sort of underlines throughout it is that fascists will appropriate symbols that are relevant to the places that they're in. So it's very hard to just identify them purely by German sort of World War II symbols. It's like basically the example he gives is that it's very likely that fascists will adopt their national flag as a symbol for fascism, which is exactly what happened here with the United Patriots Front and the Reclaim Australia bullshit. The Australian flag was reappropriated as a fascist hate symbol.
Yeah.
Well, flags are often the first thing.
They're just symbols of nationalism.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Rampant symbols of nationalism is just fascist.
Yes.
Yeah, part of the course.
Yeah, you want to go
I
to
got
that.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that sign that's at the Holocaust Museum, the signs of incipient fascism, and they've had it since like the end of the World War II. Like they're saying, this is the signs we should have seen that led to the Holocaust. And you go down the list now, and you look at America, and you just
Scary,
go,
yeah.
you just go, oh, tick, 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 tick.
Well, I've been seeing those signs in Australia for years now, with the LNP. Ticking all the boxes.
Yeah,
it's scary.
I'll see. I should be able to bring it up, but because it's really unsettling. Is this it? Oh yeah, this is from the museum. Okay, so where's the list? Okay, so it's the early warning signs of fascism: powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. I mean, is it reminding you of any country at all?
That's that's us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amplified in the US, but
yeah, but it's a global problem. Yeah. Right, I'm going to.
We had our democracy status downgraded not that long ago as well, and that's been a very gradual sort of thing that's happened over the past 10 years. There were definitely protections that were weaned away even during the Rudd and Gillard years, as well. And it's something to be very vigilant and cautious about, to say the least. And I think particularly in the United States, it's like there is, even though it doesn't technically fit the definition of a fascist government, there is, in my mind, no doubt that there is a fascist in the White House, and he would like to change it if he could.
Don't think he's smart enough to be a fascist, but he is a totalitarian. He definitely is.
I mean, I can't really draw too much of a distinction when, like, the kind of behavior that Trump has been doing and kind of encouraging is just like people are being locked up in cages, people are being suppressed by a pretty brutal military force. It's like he may not fit the actual technical definition, but there's enough boxes ticked there that I don't think it's worth making that much of a distinction.
And the GOP have been rigging elections for decades as well. Gerrymandering, voter suppression. It's just been rampant.
Yeah. But hey, I'm going to get you all quickly to vote on a particularly controversial topic. I am going to make a video while I'm all dressed up for my cocktail channel.
Sure.
And because I've got you all here who can maintain the conversation while I switch my microphone off and do it.
I'm in the middle of landing a spaceship on a planet at the moment, but I can multitask. I'm gaming as well, so
that's fair. Well, I haven't really decided yet on the Juneteenth controversy. So Friday is both Juneteenth and World Martini Day. So maybe I should just go for martini.
Juneteenth.
Oh, you weren't here, Abigail. That's a popular thing in the US. It's June 19th was the day the last state basically read the Emancipation Proclamation into law. It was Texas.
Of course it was Texas,
was the last state to officially say, yes, all the slaves are freed. So Juneteenth is quite big with people who care about such things in the US. And there are, I looked it up, there are like traditional punches and drinks, and I thought I could make a drink for my cocktail channel, but is that bordering on bad tastes in the area of cultural? And I don't know. Maybe I should make it life easier for myself and just because the same day is Martini Day, so
I always err on the side of caution. If I'm not sure, then I don't do it. Like, even if I was probably okay, it's usually best as a very, very white person.
Yes,
best to err on the side of caution.
So I might just go with Martini, but I'm going to make another one tonight, especially one, and it's going to be themed one who either. It's going to be an original cocktail of mine that I invented, that Mrs. Angry and I, or a cocktail without citrus, which I made I specifically researched cocktails without citrus for Mrs. Angry because citrus juice gives her heartburn, and a hell of a lot of cocktails have citrus in them. So I try and find ones that don't for her. And then this one, which I tried on the weekend for the first time and is quite good, has a cool name too. For some reason, it's called Beneath Broken Earth. And it's rum and orange liqueur and blackberry liqueur and grenadine. And it's really yummy.
That sounds like a mid-2000s metalcore song or band name.
Doesn't it? Kirsten had too many martinis last night for World Gin Day, but always room for more martinis. Now, the other one, this was one when I first invented it. It was with sumac-infused vodka. Sumac, well, I call it a spice. It's technically not a spice. It actually comes from dried flowers, apparently. But it's
still pretty spicy.
Yeah, it's this red spice. It's like salty, sour. It's actually a really interesting taste. And I infused vodka with it. And sumac's also very red. So it made the vodka very red. And this drink, the components are actually sumac-infused vodka, velvet falernum, lime juice, and grenadine. And out of laziness, I was calling it a sumac martini. But it isn't a martini because a martini is vodka and vermouth. And this is nothing like that. And I kept going, I need a better name. And I guess something about how red it is, maybe something about the spice. It's a bit salty, a bit sour. And Mrs. Angry actually came up with it. She said, "Ooh, salty like the sea is salty and red like ruby. You should call it a ruby princess." That's topical. Right?
Does it give you the plague as well?
It makes you not care if you've got it.
I love that. That's
okay.
So
I think Ruby Princess just got the vote. I think Ruby Princess got the vote. So
I just with that. That's so good.
That is great.
Yeah, so
It is chef's kiss good.
It was pure. I had spent ages trying to come up with a name for it, and Mrs. Angry just did that little leap of, salty like the ocean, red like ruby, ruby princess, and I went, yep, okay, cool.
Don't you just love it when someone just bangs it out of the park like that? Just
it was brilliant.
Hits it for 6.
Yeah, like Aidsy is often very good at coming up with names. Like I made a Manhattan is bourbon and vermouth, and I made one with Australian ingredients, and I was just going, I'll call this an Aussie in Manhattan, and Aidsy, he went straight to Crocodile Dundee, and he went, no, call it That's Not a Knife. So that became the name of that drink. It was like an Aussified Manhattan was Crocodile Dundee in Manhattan, and the drink became called That's Not a Knife. And
that's great.
Yeah, it was very good. All right, so I'm going to get it together and make a video of a Ruby Princess.
Okay, so one of us here has to step up and maintain the conversation here. And I'm too introverted for that.
Look, this by the way, that's the sumac infused vodka.
It looks so cool.
It looks like cherry cordial.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
So the color's awesome. So
yeah,
and it tastes good too. But yeah.
Cheers.
For National Bourbon Day, I am having some Maker's Mark.
Maker's Mark. Yeah, today is actually National Bourbon Day in America.
I don't have any bourbon.
Not drinking.
All I have is my Crystal Skull vodka.
Yeah.
So I very rarely have alcohol in the house anyway. So.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't drink
that was
very
true
often.
before the pandemic, and now it's like
no, yeah, that is actually very true. I have noticed that my average of drinks has gone up since the pandemic.
Yeah, grenadine. That's what else I need. Speaking of Stillhead vodka,
so I'm drinking vodka with soda stream water.
Yeah,
and it's actually
vodka and soda. That's traditional.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
Before, when Angry had mentioned Pete Buttigieg, or however I say his name, I just don't care enough to know. It made me think about the fact that not many people actually know that while Harvey Milk did a lot of great things for the community, he also outed his friend really, really publicly and kind of ruined his life. And we should discuss, because
what were the circumstances under the outing?
This is why no one knows about it. It's so fascinating. I found out about it from, I believe it was from Making Gay History, the podcast.
Okay.
They actually had an interview with Oliver Sickle, who was the man who was outed as gay. And the reason that Harvey Milk made the grand decision that it was his job to out this man as gay in the 70s, brilliant idea, thanks Harvey, was that this man was an ex-Marine who happened to be he was walking past the group when the assassination attempt of Gerald Ford happened.
Okay.
And he stopped it because he's a Marine and his reactions were on point. And because he stopped, he just very much didn't want to be in the media, didn't want to know about it. Like, I'm a Marine, I just did what a Marine would do. I don't want to talk about it. And Harvey Milk decided to call one of his friends in one of the publications around at the time and be like, oh no, Oliver's gay.
Yeah.
Yikes.
It was a gay man who played Ford. And it's like, you can do great things but still be trash. Like,
everyone's human. Like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. But yeah, that was
to do that in
pretty
the 70s.
awful. Yeah, in the 70s. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's
And-
never
like-
has the phrase "kill your idols" been more appropriate at times, where it's just like,
Oh,
just
like
never meet your idols. Like
yeah.
I'm still upset about some of mine, like childhood idols, and even like, oh, it's just so disappointing. And I never want to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson ever, because something's gonna happen.
Yep.
Like,
So I do
like I,
recently there was a video that's gone around of David Bowie challenging MTV on the fact that they weren't playing enough black musicians. And I was just like, I love that he's still not around, but we're still finding new ways to be like,
Yeah, it was pretty
fighting
cool.
the good fight.
except that there was a minor case of pedophilia when he was younger.
Oh, the
Yeah,
baby groupies. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
oh god, that was a thing in the
Unfortunately,
70s.
Yeah.
Baby groupies just never should have happened. And I think
13-year-old
yeah,
girls being
just-
pushed on rock stars by their mothers.
Yeah.
At least Bowie, to the best of our knowledge, was only involved once. There are a couple of really high-profile rock stars
Oh,
who
yeah.
never
Yeah, I
fucking
know.
stopped.
And if you imagine being in Bowie's shoes at the time, he'd just found all this fame and the world was turning upside down for him. And like, I don't want to give a pass for that kind of pedophilia, but like, yeah,
My
I don't
view on
like
it
in that situation, like, who knows what any of us would do.
Yeah.
And I think
think-
the thing is, like, it's not, he wasn't a pedophile. He was a child sex offender. Studying criminology, I'm finding how often we misuse those terms, particularly because, like,
sure,
pedophilia is it's something that someone can't necessarily control, is that desire to be with someone of a specific age range, but not all of those people offend, whereas all people who offend against children are child sex offenders. So
important distinction.
Because now even in the queer community, people are being like, all pedophiles should be killed, and I'm like, can you no, because what we should be doing is helping these people feel safe enough that they never offend in the first place.
Yeah. Plus, I also always feel compelled to explain to people, say, kill all the pedophiles. I understand the impulse, okay? Like the actual child sex offenders, I understand the impulse.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But talk to criminologists, and the first thing they say is, if you make the crime for rape of adults or children as severe as the penalty for murder, you are incentivizing the offender to murder their victims, because the punishment cannot be more severe. And so it feels good to say, kill the rapists, kill the child abusers. And I absolutely understand the feeling, and I have the feeling. But in a practical reality is, you're saying to someone, well, you might as well kill your victim because the punishment's no more severe.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, I totally get that. I want to protect kids.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually protect kids. That puts them in more harm. And it's just, it's that thing of, unfortunately, we have such a big issue in the general media and how they display things as if they're fucking experts, and they're not.
Yes.
Like, someone writing for the Tizer isn't a criminologist. They're barely a fucking journalist. Like,
Yes. All right, I'm going to switch my microphone off and make this video. I don't think you will have any trouble at all with topics of conversation. So keep it flowing, and this will take me minutes to do, and I'll come back.
Sure.
Yeah, John just said in the comments, it's dangerous to start trying to protect pedos. What I'm saying is not protecting. What I'm saying is people who identify that they have that predilection can get treatment to avoid offending, because if they don't offend in the first place, there's not an issue. If you just have an inclination to do, it's the same as someone can be a psychopath but never actually go commit psychopathic
it's same with people who are pyromaniacs. Like, if they're treated, they may never start a fire.
Exactly.
if
And
they
it's
get
that thing of
treatment.
identifying it early, allowing them treatment, giving them support, because we know from people who have been like traumatized to be violent criminals, or people who have gone through, pyromania, people who identify on a scale of necrophilia, which doesn't always mean dead. Sometimes it means unconscious. Need to clarify that. There's like 10 scale levels of that as a distinction clinically.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, like
I know what I'm Googling later.
the joys of me I'm studying it, and then I'm also listening to things like Wine and Crime, and like True Crime Obsessed kind of goes into more the docos, but some of those where like Wine and Crime in particular actually do, at the start of every episode, they'll go through if there's any psychology or any research behind why these kinds of crimes occur. And their first episode was necrophilia. And they were like, and here's this information. And I was like, I know what I'll be doing after this episode.
I've always had a morbid fascination with necrophilia.
It's just like, what? Why people are drawn to? And is it something that is caused by trauma, which more often than not it seems to be? But then you like Dharma, who said that he never had a traumatic childhood, but I do wonder if, based on some of his criminal stuff where he said he blacked out, that sounds almost as if he was dissociating. So he could have even dissociated and blocked a memory where he was traumatized and never known, because that's the whole point. Your brain protects you. But then unfortunately he did really horrific stuff, and because the homophobic police were just like, oh god, it's a queer, get it away, they could have caught him a couple of times and didn't, which drives me nuts. But yeah, it's that thing of, if we have more clinical understanding, and if we could communicate that in a way that people don't see it as black and white, it is unfortunately a scale of grey, that can avoid a lot of this crime that does occur. And more often than not, it's not a random stranger on the street that you need to be concerned about. It's the people that you know and have that trust already that will then breach that trust because they feel safe and comfortable too.
It's also like a societal kind of weird double standard that we have as well, because it's like absolutely everyone expresses like repulsion and anger towards pedophiles, and like I definitely understand where that comes from. But at the same time, we've also got a culture that really fetishizes, like you go on a porn website and you search the teen category, it's like there's this sort of perverse sort of double standard where it's like there is this very deliberate sexualization of young women, but at the same time this like complete condemnation of this sort of thing. And that's like that creates a really fucked up culture, and the sort of vilification. And it's like I anyone who commits a child sex offense, like I don't have any sympathy for. I have very strong feelings on the Catholic Church, for example. Yes. But at the same time, there also needs to be an approach where it's going to be, it's not just built out of a punitive reaction to it, and more of a restorative kind of approach, where it's not just this sort of, just this black and white, we've locked this human being in a cell for so many years, and that suddenly restores the crime that happened in the first place. And it's like, I don't think, like, apart from some sort of like very old sense of like black and white, eye for an eye justice, I don't think that's an appropriate response to any crime.
No, and we're seeing that now with some of the studies that are coming out of places like Canada and America, where they're trialing community release programs where people who have committed really horrific offenses against like minors, or just in general quite bad sex offenses, have then gone through a community support release where, okay, these are the people you're accountable to. You will have a tracker on you for X amount of, for this parole period, and you can only be in these areas. And if you feel an inclination, these are the support people you reach out to so that you don't offend again, so you can learn coping strategies. Because more often than not, the people who are offending, particularly in sexual-based crimes, have been offended against themselves, or have been so brainwashed by the exact things of the way that porn and then media and then like social media talk about how we treat people as a whole, let alone if we fetishize things, That's what's causing the offending. So if we can deal with that before it becomes an offense, great. If after one offense you can then stop them from ever offending again, that's a great outcome. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen until we really change that approach to it. But in the countries where they have implemented some of these strategies, it's really making a change. And for a lot of the offenders, once they go through that work and realize why they're offending, they're horrified at what they've done, because they're realizing that it's actually an internalized trauma, that their response was to hurt someone else. And then they're like, I've then put my trauma on someone else. Now they're going to go through this shit. And it's like, yeah, mate, that's why we need to get to you before you offend.
Yeah. Well, speaking of don't meet your heroes, there was a certain comedian I grew up with who is now, I think he's in jail now, who offended a lot. Yeah, interesting topic we landed on from don't meet your heroes. Because I have a ton of like childhood heroes that turned out to be awful people, and it's like, come on, give me someone.
As someone who's into a lot of extreme metal, it's like, it's just a constant sort of process of learning. Oh yeah, no, this person's a fucking Nazi, or this person's a fucking abuser or a rapist, and things like that. And it's I have continual ongoing frustrations, although there appears to be a very solid pushback in some parts of the extreme metal community. There is a band I would definitely recommend looking up at one point called Neckbeard Death Camp, who managed to annoy quite a lot of far-right fascist Nazi metal makers by releasing an album called White Supremacy is for Basement-Dwelling Losers. And they're very tongue-in-cheek and very on the nose, and they piss off Nazis all the time.
Yeah,
anything that pisses off Nazis, I'll get behind.
And I laugh at that. So John's in the comments saying that the person causing the offending is the offender. That's just clinically and factually wrong. I'm just going to say that outright. The offender is being triggered by particular events. That's just not how psychology works. So, no. Like,
I need to duck out very quickly. I will be back.
Same as like when someone shoplifts, they're not shoplifting for the point of shoplifting. They are shoplifting out of a need. So whether that be they don't have a source of income, they're unable to eat, they're starving, this is the only way to get food. They may have attempted to get food through legal means and have been denied that, or may simply not be able to gain that food through legal means. That's a reason to shoplift. Yeah,
some people shoplift for mental health reasons as well. Exactly. And like they just take stuff.
Just because that's how their brain is processing things. And I know when I worked in retail, we used to get people who would shoplift because of peer pressure. That is a very valid reason to commit crime, particularly for young men. It doesn't mean the crime's okay, but that's an actual trigger, and that has been proven through psychological research that men between particular ages will be more likely to offend when peer pressure is around because they want to be accepted. So it's factually wrong to say the offender is the reason that there's offending. No, there are multiple things that go into that.
It's like saying guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's just it's this oversimplification of a very complex issue.
And I never said that sex offenders aren't responsible for their actions. I said that normally their actions are caused by trauma. That's not saying that they're not responsible for those actions once they've been committed. That's saying that there is a reason as to why those actions have occurred. It's not the right way to deal with those, but that's why we need early intervention into victims so that they don't then offend against other people.
We're back in the rabbit hole.
I think it's hard.
We declare this channel this is the Angry Aussie Autonomous Zone now that we've taken it over.
Well, it's not about like IT or science or astrophysics. So I'm like, I don't know how to talk intelligently. What am I saying?
You're sounding quite articulate, Abigail, so I wouldn't worry at all.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a very simple layman's understanding of psychology, and I also have empathy. So that's I mean, it's important to have that.
Yeah, if we're talking about crime and like the causes of crime in particular, like the vast majority of what is called crime a lot of the time is absolutely driven and motivated by structural inequality as well. It's like if we're broadening the scope out away from sort of child sex offenders and things like that, it's just like most people commit crime because they grow up in poverty or there's some sort of, economic basis to it, and it doesn't absolve individual responsibility completely, but at the same time it's like, and sort of going back to my favorite topic of the police as well, it's like when you talk about sort of enforcement of crime and things like that, like when you talk about like just like petty theft and robberies and things like that, and how much money is stolen through that compared to how much is stolen through stolen wages and how little that's addressed. And it kind of becomes very clear what the function and the role of the police is.
Even something like, there's a book that I need to finish reading once this semester's done, from a man in Australia who he's used a fake name for the book, obviously, who committed a white-collar crime offence of stealing money from his job in a bank because he had a reasonably common name, and when a cheque for a payout came back returned mail, and he was going through financial stresses and had a lot of underlying issues to do with the fact that he had been through emotional and that kind of trauma through parental divorce and never feeling good enough and XYZ, like all those kinds of things that are really little traumas that build up, so that then as an adult he was wanting to do all the things and provide for his wife and thought, oh, I'll just check the one and then that would make our mortgage payment, and then kept being able to do it because he never got caught, and then finally got caught. Sadly, it was also the bank his wife worked for, and fortunately she didn't lose her job, but he put her in a very awkward spot. But the jail sentence that he got for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from one of the big banks was really minuscule compared to, some of the other more gratuitous offences that do occur that actually do need bigger sentences and actually need programs while you're in that sentence, so that way we can actually get you out to not reoffend. But he was sat in jail and he, didn't even get to really do anything to develop himself to never steal money again. Like, at least put the guy through a fucking finance course. He clearly doesn't know how to manage his money. But nothing.
I don't want to talk to the whole you can't manage money, because there's systemic reasons why some people can't manage money. It's like, and for him, through no fault of their own. But he was a banker. His wife was a banker. That's
was
just middle class debt.
Really up. He could have pulled himself out of it sooner, and he just didn't.
Particularly with the crime that I was talking about with stolen wages as well. It's like these are employers who just straight up just steal wages from workers, whether it's through like unpaid overtime. I've had wages stolen from me. I did a couple of days of casual work, and they didn't.
I just don't understand how employers don't get jail sentences for literally stealing money off their employees. I don't get it.
I agree.
It's not a criminal offence.
And that's it needs to change.
It's a bookkeeping error. It's not a criminal offence. It should be a criminal offence.
Absolutely.
The directors of a company should be held criminally liable. The person who's responsible for processing the pay should have liability. It's 10 different kinds of bullshit.
It says a lot about the way that our society is structured, though, in terms of like what's actually considered a serious offence. And it's like someone stealing a chook from Coles is considered a more serious offence than someone doing unpaid overtime. It shows you exactly what the political establishment's class interests are when it comes to protecting people who do that. And they steal way more. It's like at least twice over what people steal through robbery and petty theft as a whole. Like,
Yeah.
and it's definitely, it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about a whole lot when we're talking about like criminality and things like that. And I would definitely recommend. There's a YouTuber who I follow called Thought Slime, who put out a fantastic video recently on. He was talking about the riots over in the United States, and it was crime and legitimacy, and sort of like the whole question of if there's violence, if there's looting, does that delegitimize any sort of expressions of anger or things like that? Yeah, he sums it up way better than I could, and I think it's just brilliant. So I thoroughly recommend that.
Can I just answer a question that was put before? There's not really much happening in astronomy at the moment. To be honest, there's just all the big headlines are did we find another Earth-like planet?
Oh yes, we talked about that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So musical aviator. That's basically what's happening, and I'm eagerly awaiting the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's
New space telescope.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, it almost lost funding halfway through building it, but because of the Trump administration defunding NASA, but then they managed to find money for it, so it was saved. Thank goodness. Yeah, Trump's really big on space, and it's weird, but like, even a broken clock is right twice a day,
Yeah.
So, but don't get me started too much on this. He recently rolled back all the transgender protections in healthcare in the US, and I'm livid. I am so angry about it.
It's just so vindictive. Like,
there's
some people still don't.
No reason for it other than pure hatred and ideology.
Oh, and he did it on the anniversary of the Pulse massacre. I had to turn off social media as an empath.
Yeah.
It was killing me. I just couldn't deal with that. Oh,
yeah. It's like people don't understand. But Trump's obviously evil and corrupt and a rapist and a racist and all these things. Why are you supporting him? Because he's being cruel to the people that a certain section of America wants him to be cruel to. They'll overlook everything about him being dumb as shit, competent, criminal, all those. They'll overlook all that because he's inflicting cruelty on people they want to see cruelty inflicted on.
And it is wanton cruelty.
Yeah. No, it's gross. It's absolutely gross. And that's like when people say, like, how could you do that? It's like so cruel. And go, the cruelty is the point. You need to understand that. It's not logical. It's not reasonable. It's inflicting cruelty because they want to inflict cruelty. That's not a strategy. That's an end point. Being cruel is an end point. And it's like, oh my God. It's fucked. It's so fucked.
Yeah, like I can't talk about it with, like, I'm usually very facetious as a person, but I just can't talk about it without getting angry and just viscerally angry.
Oh yeah, no, it's angry is the only sane response.
Yeah, well, if I lived there, I'd probably end up in jail from assassinating him or something. I don't know. Like I took a poll once. You know those that remember the age of online polls. I took a poll once about what your place would be if your government turned evil, and it came up freedom fighter. So like, I'm there. I'd fight for
the barricades.
Chaotic good kind of. Yeah.
To the barricades, comrades.
Yeah.
Trump's gotten cranky on Twitter again because there's footage that's going all around Twitter of him slipping on a ramp.
Why can he not walk? Why does he
can't walk?
Like, you don't like this? Guess what? It's everywhere.
That's the Streisand effect.
I love it so much.
He can't use an umbrella either, so
he can't even stand. Have you seen how he stands? Like he's trying to hide his gut, and speaking as a fat bastard, I can kind of empathize. But he does this weird. Look, find the pictures of him standing. It's this weird thrust forward thing. It's like, dude, standing's not that difficult. Why can't you do it? Why can't you?
I'm looking forward to the hordes of reactionaries who are going to trip over in response to it and say, "Ha ha, libs, we've tripped too." Like that'll probably be the ridiculous. I still remember when it was revealed that Trump has his steaks well done, and I haven't eaten meat in over a decade. But when I did eat meat, I knew that steaks being well done tasted like absolute shit. and I just saw this horde of people who were just like, no, we love our steaks well done. Let's eat shitty well done steaks to own the libs. And it's like,
with tomato sauce. Don't forget the tomato sauce.
Oh,
He ate his steaks with tomato sauce.
Yeah. But they'll put themselves through such discomfort purely because of what you were talking about before, is that he will enact oppression and violence on people they hate, and that's all they need to get behind him. Yeah. And it's just such a fucked reactionary backwards way of thinking.
It's a certain type of cognitive dissonance. Like there's normal cognitive dissonance that you see a lot in politics, but with people who just have to cling to that hatred and violence against people they hate, they have to block certain things out. And that's a special breed of willful cognitive ignorance.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very weird. Doing stupid self-destructive shit to own the libs, destroying your own property already paid for.
They're literally cutting figuratively cutting the nose off to spite their face. The Trump government is destroying America, and they're waving their Confederate flags and cheering for it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I just noticed.
Pokemon Go has been around longer than the Confederacy at this point. Like, I don't understand the fucking ridiculous attachment. Well, I do understand. It's because they're fucking racist and they want to celebrate slavery. That's why they're doing it. But this whole thing about it's Southern pride, but it's this one flag that was only representing the Confederacy for a very short period of time. That's really important somehow.
Yeah.
You know, these people,
well, they're celebrating.
They're
celebrating losers. So
celebrating losers. There was that joke because the NASCAR said they were actually going to ban Confederate flags.
Yes.
And NASCAR is always full of Confederate flags. And The Onion or someone similar, like one of those satire sites, did a thing saying the headline of the article was NASCAR tells Confederate fans not to worry, the Confederate flag will still be flown at the last lap of the race, because apparently they wave a white flag to show. So the photo was a white flag being waved.
Yeah.
You know, NASCAR promises to wave the Confederate flag at the last lap of every race.
Excellent.
Nice. Okay. PBR Street Gang and Mr. Grant Gregory said, "Oh no, I didn't know you were doing a stream. I'm going to bed. That's what I'm doing because it's 10 o'clock." So nice to see you, but missing you for now because gonna go to bed. Cool. Thank you, fine folk, for joining on cam. Thank you, everyone, for joining in chat. Hope you all be well. I'm not actually sure what I'm doing tomorrow night, so I don't know if I'm going to do a live stream or be otherwise occupied, but you never know. But I'll see you sometime during the week, hopefully. Hope you all look after yourselves. Good night, one and all. Take care. Saying